Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Robin Bennett, an Alpha expert and founder of Start Software over in the UK. Many of you here have seen Robin's presentations before, and I have a feeling we're going to see something cool today. It's some stuff from the latest versions of Alpha Anywhere. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? Hello, Robin, are you there?
I am, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter. And in a second, you should see a dialog box appear on your screen.
Let's try that one. How's that looking?
And I am looking at a PowerPoint, so it looks good.
Cool.
I love that picture, by the way. I was told, I think on another webinar, that it was freezing cold that day. So you're all out there with short sleeve shirts, looking like brilliant out. It was like, yeah, very cold.
Yeah, Dan said that last week, didn't he? Dan in our team did the webinar last Wednesday. I actually don't remember the weather. I remember it being warm, but it might just be my memory. I'm an old person, so my memory
is weak. Or it could have been hypothermia. Can affect the. Yeah.
It could easily have been. In fact, yeah, Dan's webinar from. You'll still see my screen, okay, Dave?
Yeah, we're taking a look at release notes now. Yep. Very cool.
Okay, you're a couple of seconds behind me, I think. So I'm just on our website, actually. Can you see our website now?
Yep, I see your website. Oops, no, yep, I see your website.
Cool. I think we've got a little bit of a delay, but we'll manage. Yeah, so Dan's website, Dan's webinar from last week is already on our website. So we've got an Alpha Software section on our website. We talk about what we do, and I've put Dan's one here. These are all of our collection of webinars we've done together, Dave. There's quite a collection there.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I'm afraid this tonight's isn't going to be the most riveting in the sense that I'm not telling a story, but it's interesting because we're looking at some new features, and new features are always interesting, aren't they?
Definitely.
And Jack in our team is doing one, I think, next week with you, which will be very interesting because he's talking about Docker and new ways of building mobile apps in Alpha. So that'll be really fun.
That would be very interesting. Yeah,
it will, and that's well outside my pay grade. So yeah, I'll be watching that one myself. So today's webinar is inspired by the nightly notes, the pre-release notes. We keep a really close eye on these in the team because it gives us an idea of the new features that are coming up and any bugs that have been fixed or any performance improvements. By the way, as an aside, the new Alpha Cloud performance is brilliant.
Yep.
I saw an email from Selwyn yesterday. So this is the new server instances I think you've deployed in Alpha Cloud. Our customers have so noticed the difference, Dave.
It's enormous. Even on Transform, when you're going into dashboards and stuff, what used to take 3 or 4 seconds to load comes up in about a second. So yeah, we're really pleased with that improvement. So that announcement actually only went out to people who are currently Alpha Cloud subscribers, but it is a cool thing to know that we've made some huge performance increases.
Yes, and in fact, we've also noticed it in Transform. Yeah, Lucas that works with us, he does a lot of Transform, and he mentioned it to me the other day. So yeah, it's super duper job, really good, fantastic improvements. Anyway, we keep a close eye on the release notes, as I mentioned. The release notes you can get to from within Alpha. I think it's on one of the help menus, isn't it? I think the pre-release notes. But anyway, here's the URL if you're not sure how to find them. And yeah, we dip into them most days to see what's going on. And I spotted these new lookup options. They're looking up to a list and looking up, doing the custom lookups. By the way, again, another little aside, I'm full of them today. The last couple of webinars we've done together, Dave, have been about AI, I think. And I am going to show a little AI snippet right at the end of this webinar, which means it's worth watching the boring stuff to get to that.
You got to stay to the end then, folks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. There is something at the end that's worth seeing.
Okay,
it's a very cool thing that popped up in my email this morning, and I thought I'm going to have to share this with the Alpha community.
Fantastic. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this later on video, don't skip ahead. You want to watch the whole thing.
Anyway, so lookups. I spotted these two features in the latest builds, so looking up to a list and looking up to custom controls and things. I thought this will be worth exploring. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a little recap for everybody of all of the lookup options but we'll end up with the new ones, and then we'll think about some wacky and more interesting ways of using these now that we can use lists and custom stuff. So that's what I'm planning to do. So it's all about lookups today. Let's get straight into it, I think. Well, actually, the first thing I ought to say is you may not be aware, if you're watching this and you're a fairly new user, how do you actually get one of these nightly builds? What's this all about? What is a nightly build or a pre-release build? You get at them by using the installer. So this is the Alpha installer. This, by the way, I'll just, once it's up on my screen, can you see all these Alpha versions I've got installed on my laptop, Dave? Can you see that on the screen yet?
Yes, I can see them, and it helps if I turn off mute.
That's because it's very important, and again, if you're new to Alpha, you might not be aware of this. It's very important if you're developing in an application that you develop in the version of the application of Alpha that is deployed on the server, whether it's the classic app server or IIS, or even in Alpha Cloud itself. So I've got all these versions on my laptop because either we have systems in these older versions still, or we're supporting software for other people and we need to use those versions. So yeah, it's quite a collection I've got on my machine, but that's fine because
quite a few.
It is
usually
quite a few.
You'd have a nightly build perhaps in a stable, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's because we support applications around the world for all sorts of people that need us to. So yeah, it's no problem. Anyway, the Universal Installer, brilliant piece of software, which is where you install software from. If you go to the Available tab and then the Developer Edition option here, you can see I can change the type of build here. Look, and I've got nightly build as an option. Hopefully we're roughly in sync on the screen share. Oh, great. So the nightly build, once you've chosen that, you can then pick a nightly option. Nightlies are never to be used in production applications. So don't deploy on a nightly because you're likely going to hit some bugs, but they're great for exploring new features. So that's how you do that. So that's how I install the nightlies. So I've got running here 9159, which is a few days old, but it's still one of the new ones. And let's just have a look at lookups. What is a lookup in the first place? Well, it's a means of improving the user interface so that your user doesn't have to key something in. They can pick it from a list or a screen and not have to sort of key it in exactly. Often used for codes, of course. So if you want somebody to key in a product code or a customer code or an account code, you want to give them some choices. Don't make them key it in because they might key in the wrong thing. The ones I'm going to show you today are all to do with UX components. UX components are the building block of most applications in Alpha Anywhere, either desktop browser applications or mobile applications, either mobile browser or mobile apps. I'm going to start with a blank UX. And the first thing we'll do is we'll just stick a text box on so that we've got, because the lookups work with text boxes. So let's do that. I'm using the Control-A shortcut to bring up the add control list. And I'm just going to use text box. We'll call this text box type in, because that's what we're going to be doing in this one. We're going to be typing in, and I'm just going to make it 50% wide so that we can see that. And not surprisingly, I told you this is going to be exciting, Dave, this one. This is a screen with a text box in that I can type in something. Now, this is actually going to be a company name. So this is going to be my company. Okay, so nothing exciting here, but if this was an application that you actually wanted somebody to choose or type in a company name from your database that you're working with, then what you'd actually want is to present a list of some sort. So I'm going to add another, and this is what a lookup is. I'm going to add another control, another text box. This time I'm going to call, this one's going to be auto suggest. Let's call it that. You can call it anything you like. I'm just calling it just so that we can see the label on screen. Again, I'll make it 50% wide on the screen, otherwise it'd be a little bit small. And I'll go to lookup, which is down here. There it is. And I'm going to change this to auto suggest. I'm going to skip past grid for the moment, Dave, because we're going to come back to grid. We're going to start simple. We're going to go auto suggest, edit combo, cascading, etc. So make it auto suggest, then the lookup definition. So this is where you're saying, where do the items come from that are going to be on the list that is shown. Static is a static list of values, so a list that never changes. Rarely use those, occasionally we do. Variable comes from some programming that you're doing. Again, we use those sometimes. The most common by far is dynamic, which comes from a database, typically. I'm going to pull everything from the Northwind database. That's a sample database that comes in Alpha Anywhere. Very easy to set that up. It's just a couple of clicks, so that you can try this yourself if you're watching this live or on YouTube later. Where we're going to get our data from today is the customers table, and the field that I want to show is the company name field. And that's all I need to do. So if I now go into working preview there, and I start typing the name of a customer in here, there we go. So I've just typed AN, and there are the two customers that have AN at the start of them. So I can just pick from the list. Really simple to set up, nice and quick, nice design as well, you know, very sort of modern design, nice and easy. So there's our first one done. Let's do the next one. So this is a recap. These aren't new features. This is just a little recap of ones that have been there for a while. Next one's called an edit combo. We use these all the time, very useful. This time I'm going to make this one the edit combo, as I said. Here it is. Edit combo list is the lookup type. Very similar dialog to the auto suggest. So again, I'm going to make it database driven, coming from the customers table. I can select multiple fields here to show, by the way. I'm only going to show the company name, but often you'd select more than one. And this time you have to specify which field you want to return back into the text box. So I'm going to say company name. I'm not going to make any other changes at this point, other than I will make this 50% wide, because when I was rehearsing this, I realized if I didn't, they were all far too narrow. And we should get the same idea as we did with our auto suggest, but now we've got a drop down that we can use to select from, or I can also type into here, look, and I get the sort of edit suggest feature working at the same time as well. So far so good. Next one then, let's add another text box. So Control A again to bring up my list, text box, and this time it's going to be a cascading list. We don't use these anywhere near as much as we should, Dave, cascading lists, because they're actually really good, but we forget that they exist. Do you use them much yourself? Do you ever get into cascading lists?
You know what? I don't use them as much as I should either, and I'm putting together an app right now that is using cascading lists, but I happen to be handling it with JavaScript. But we'll see what you
okay. Yeah,
I might have a better way. This might be the better way.
Yeah, so again, same idea. We drop into a very similar dialogue to the others to say, where's the list coming from? I'm going to say it's coming from the customers table, but I'm going to show now the order you pick the fields here, Dave, is critical. So you've got to pick, cascading list is like drilling down to the level that you want. So I'm going to start with country, then I'm going to go to company name. So the order is significant here. That's all I need to do. Now, if we go work in preview, let's see what we do with this. So I click the drop down, I get all of the countries showing automatically from the data that I've got. Now, if I go to the country, look, I just get the companies in that country. So Alpha's doing all of the legwork there to generate these distinct lists from the data that exists. I think that's really cool.
That's very cool.
You can use any number of levels as well. So in fact, if I go back to that and let's just change it, and we'll go, let's go country, city, company. So the last one you're selecting is going to be what's returned. That's the point. And this will be even more drill downy. Is that a word, drill downy? I just made that up.
It is now. Yeah.
Okay. So now we've got country, and then the city, and then the finally the company. I think I like them. I like them a lot. I think we should use them more. Let's make a mental note, Dave. We should use these more.
Yep.
Right, next one, Control A again, text box again. This one's going to be the grid. This is the one I skipped over, and I'm guessing it's first on the list in Alpha Anywhere because it's probably the first one that was built, I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm just making that up. But it requires a little bit of work before you use it. Now, let me just create that, and I'll show you what I had to do before I could use the grid lookup. So I actually had to build a grid. Now, I've called it the customer lookup grid. And if we just run that, I'll show you what it looks like. It's a list of customers presented nicely. It's sort of paginated. I also put a quick search on the top so I can actually look for I could sort of search for a customer that way. I've got 2 with the BON in the name there, look. So I had to build this in advance. Now grids, if you've not come across them, they're different component type to a UX. They specifically show data from database tables or views. They're not general purpose and they're not great on mobile. So they're quite specific in use, but they are fast and they're extremely quick to build. So don't rule them out as a component type. We still use them quite a lot. But if you pre-build one, like I just did there, then you can access that in the grid lookup option. So if I go down to lookup and we say this time this is going to be a grid. Here I've got to define it. So I go into the definition. It says, okay, which grid? Well, I've only got one grid. So there it is. You can do things like the size and the position and things. Field map's the important one. So you're saying, when I select something in the grid, where do I want it to go in the UX? So whatever, so the field I've called grid, perhaps slightly confusingly, I'm going to fill in with the company name. So these are the fields that are actually defined on the grid itself, and it's going to go into the field that I've called grid. That's all I need it to do for this one. Click OK. Let's have a look how that looks. So this is going to be a slightly more sophisticated thing. So you get by default, you get a magnifying glass. You click that, and here's the grid look I defined. So I can select it. So let's have around the horn. That's popped that in. Or I could use my search that I just showed you. Could find a record that way and select that. You can also customize, Dave, very easily, as well as the size and the style. You can customize whether you want a button to select the record or a hyperlink, or you want to click or double click. Very flexible, very, very, very flexible.
Nice.
So far we've got just a text box.
And reusable, by the way. Once you have that grid, if you're using a lot of, yeah, so you can get it.
Yeah, I meant to mention that. Yeah, with that is something we do a lot of. So yeah, we'll build a grid that's used as just a standalone grid off a menu item, but then we'll reuse it as a lookup, perhaps in 5 or 6 different UXs. Yeah. So thank you, Dave. Yes, grids really reusable. So yeah, good, worth exploring that. If you haven't got into that, worth exploring. So just to recap, I've got a text box to key into. I've got an auto suggest which I can type into. I've got an edit combo which I can type into or select from the drop down. I've got a cascading list which gets us to the same place, but by drilling down, and then I've got my grid option. So all of those that I've just shown you are all have all been around for a while, but the 2 we're going to do now are the brand new ones. These are the ones that I referred to on the nightly notes. So if I just scroll down and wait for things to catch up, you can see I've got the lookup list and I've got the custom lookup. So let's have a go at those. The list one, so not surprisingly, you have to create a list first. A list is a control in an Alpha Anywhere UX. Very flexible, can just look like a list of data, but can look like something quite different. We'll come to those later on in the webinar. But you have to define it first. So the first thing I'm going to do is add another control. I'm going to add a list control, and I'm going to call this, let's call it list, it's fine. I'm going to use the quick setup genie to define the list because that's the quickest way to do it. So it's again similar dialogue we've had before. We're getting data from the customers table, the field list. I'll just show the company name. I'll have the customer ID as well, actually. And that should be it. I might have to define one more thing. I'll come back to that in a minute. What I forgot to add is actually the text box, which is we're going to link to the list. So I'll do that now as well. So list, I'll just call this my list text box. Try that again. The text box, and I'll call it my list text box. And I'll make that 50% wide like I made all the others. Now let's just check to see.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
You can.
You are really quick at finding where that percentage is in the property sheet. If you actually go back to list of controls.
Yeah, I'll just, while I'm here, I'm just going to change the list. I forgot to say what the list should return. So I'll just do that.
Okay, go ahead and do that. Right.
Yeah, let me just do that. Yeah. So I want it to return the company name. That's just all I've done there is say the list is going to show data from the customer table, but when a record is selected or a row is selected, I want it to return the company name field. That's all I did there. So sure. Let me go back to there. So yeah, sorry, Dave, what did I do?
Yeah, so for example, you selected that and you chose the width, and you're very quick at
Yeah.
scrolling down to field properties. But if you move your mouse over there onto the menu, near where it says menu, find mobile, just move to the
Oh, yeah,
left.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is a percentage one over, two over.
Oh, you're right, there is.
So right
I should
there,
have used that, shouldn't I?
we use these all the time. So it's just a quick way to grab. If you just go ahead and click on, choose, I think.
Yeah, you're
It's just a
absolutely
really
right.
quick way to
Oh,
say
that,
up 50%,
that.
100%, whatever. And
Thank
and
you,
it's
Dave.
so great when you just to run through them. So, but
Mm.
you can already spot it on the right, so it probably isn't going to save you any time. But for a newbie,
Well,
that's a good
I
way to
never
get
use
started.
that. I never ever use that. Isn't that amazing? Thank you.
It's time saver.
That's a huge time saver. Thank you, Dave.
Mhm.
Right, let's just see if the list is working. Now, we've not defined the lookup part of it yet, but I just want to check that the list is actually working. Have you noticed, by the way, I'm playing with fire here today. I'm never saving the UX as I'm going along.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm just mad me. I'm just crazy. This is like, it's like walking a tightrope.
Working without a net. Yeah.
Here we go. So here's the list. That looks like a sensible list, doesn't it, of customers? That'll do. Good. Now, how do we make that list the lookup for this text box? Here's the secret. So I'm going to go back to my lookup. You're going to tell me now there's a lookup option on here as well, aren't you?
No.
So it's quite convenient in the search actually, because all of the three things I need to adjust, all of the three properties I need to adjust, all have the word lookup in them. So if I just type lookup in the search, I get all three together. I should have been doing that from the beginning. So this is a list control lookup. This is brand new in Alpha Anywhere. The definition. So it says, what's the list that we want to use for the lookup? There it is. I've only got one list called list. And it says, okay, this is interesting. The list that you've selected is not enclosed in a window container. So I need to enclose it in a window container first. Fine, let's do that. So how do I do that? Again, add a control. I'm going to select the list first, Dave. Add a control. It's a container that I want. So I'm started typing the word container. There's container. There's all manner of different types of container, but the one it's told me to use is a window container. And if I click the button here that says insert around, it's going to insert that container around the control or controls that I have selected. So that's exactly what I want to do. So that's wrapped the list now in this container, this window container. So let's try the lookup again. See if it'll let me do it this time. Cool, it has. So we've got a couple of things we can change if we want to. We've got a commit button label and a cancel button label. I don't like the word commit. I'd rather have it said okay. We can also change the width of things and the height of things and whether or not we want the selection to be made on a double click or not. I'll just leave everything else as default. Now let's try that. Let's see how that looks and works. So here's my text box, and look, I've got a drop down now appearing. If I click that, sure enough, here's my lovely list. So I'll choose Eastern Connection, click OK, and that's typed that in for me. That's nice, isn't it? I think that's really simple, really nice.
Very cool.
And of course, because it's a list, well, we could change the properties of this list. So I could go back into the list properties. I could add a search to it. I could do all sorts of things to this. So I could add a search part, which would make that list searchable. So it'd sort of turn into something that looked very like the grid lookup that I did, but without having to create the grid component. Also with lists, you have, as I mentioned briefly, which we'll come on to later, but just another little signpost in this for later on. Lists don't have to look like lists. Lists can look like maps. They can look like calendars. They can look like Kanban displays, which are sort of how you might do project management type things. They can be snaking lists. So the thought that a list can be a lookup, you can think outside the box a bit about how the list is actually displayed. So you can have a lookup that is a list, but doesn't actually look like a list. More of that later. The last one we'll look at is the custom one. This is the other brand new one. So again, I need a text box just so that we've got something to look up to. So text box there. This one's going to be our custom lookup. And I'll use Dave's shortcut feature there. Why didn't I know about that, Dave? That's made me. Hours of my life, I could have saved without days probably. Never mind. defined. Now what we need to do is the custom code. Now what we do, it's very similar to a list. We wrap it in a window. So I know this already, so I'm actually going to put the container on. So I'm going to add the container, make it a window container, and I'm going to insert it this time after the text box. So I've got my container ready. And what I'm going to do is, we need some controls in here, Dave, that are going to be displayed when we look up to this custom lookup. So I'm going to add a piece of static text. So I was trying to think of why we'd use this feature. I think putting instructions on would be a use of this. So please choose from the list below. So that's just a little bit of static text I'm going to display. Then I'm going to actually use a drop-down box control in my custom lookup. Now I'll let it just call drop-down box 1. Drop-down boxes are a control type, look a little bit like an edit combo lookup on a text box, but they're slightly different and have slightly different features. But I can select the choices now for my drop-down box. I can say it's dynamic. I can say it's that same connection string. I can say I'm going to be picking from the customers table, and I'm going to choose the company name. Other options are available. And now what we can do, first thing I'm going to do is just make sure that this is actually displaying a tool. And then I'm going to link the two things together. So I'm going to link that custom stuff back to the custom text box. Now it's not displaying, that's because I've wrapped it in that window container. So that wasn't a very clever thing for me to do. So I'll just go straight ahead and do the lookup, I think. So back into the lookup, enable the property, say this is a custom, this is the brand new feature in Alpha Anywhere. And the definition, so it says, where's the window? Well, it's window 2. And when I choose that, it's actually going to give it an explicit name. So I could have done that manually, but it's going to do it for me anyway, which is fine. Again, I'm going to change the commit label to be okay. I think that's better. I can change the height and width and things. The other bit you have to do, Dave, here is you have to put a little bit of code in. So my field here, look, is called drop-down box 1. And we have to fill out this part here on the on commit. And if I go into the builder, it tells us how to do it. So what I have to do, I have to say var results. This is a bit of JavaScript I'm writing here. And I want the value that's going to come from the drop-down box 1 field. But before I do that, I'm actually going to just make sure that I've got my syntax right at all and make sure that it's working. I'm going to put that little bit of JavaScript in to put a fixed value. Okay, this is what we do all of the time when we're writing code. Do something simple first to make sure it's going to work. So let's check that works. So we should get the custom stuff displaying now. When I click the drop down, I do, and there's my drop down box, and here's my list of companies. That's all working fine. But when I click OK, look what happens. It just puts the word test in. It doesn't put in the company that I chose. That's because of the code that I just wrote. So let's fix that code. So that was me just making sure that this was going to work when I actually make it work properly. Now, to pull in the value from the drop-down box control, I can use this insert UX component method. The method that I need is get value. I know this because I've been working in Alpha for a long time. I can insert that, and then I just need the control name here to go in. And there's a little shortcut, which it does tell you on the screen, which is control down, which gives me the list of all of the controls. Here's drop-down box 1. So that should do the job. So if I okay that, work in preview. Now, whichever company I choose from my drop-down box, and there's our bit of static text as well, look. So if I pick around the horn, click OK, around the horn goes into the field. There we go. So that's all of the lookup types, start to finish, every single one defined, and it took us, I think, 18 minutes. That's not bad. So there's lots of variety in there. Now, I just chose the default options and the simplest sort of selection of properties for each one, but you can get much more. Let me just save that away. I will save it this time. So this was done in the webinar. So have a look at a little bit. Any questions, by the way, Dave? I forgot to say we do welcome questions as we're going along. Anybody got anything to?
There was actually, I thought, a very good comment, and that was that when you're doing lookups, in many cases, you might want to add a value to that lookup source. Like you're not there, or, Robin's not there. I want to add Robin as a new customer. And you
Yeah,
can
good,
certainly do
good
that in
idea.
Grid, and it can do that, looks like in List Adding Custom as well, provided that you programmed it to do so, to write back to your tables. But that's
Yeah, you
certainly
can. Yeah, and there's a couple of other ways you can do that as well. Yeah, really good point. Very often you do want people to be able to add a value. Sometimes you don't. You don't want them to be able to add a new customer straight into there. You might need them to go elsewhere. But yeah, with the new custom, with the list, with the grid, they're all really cool ways of doing that, because you've got the features to make all of those editable lists as well as just normal lists. So yeah, good comment that. Here I've pre-built this one. It's the same idea of what we just done, but I've enhanced things a little bit so that we're looking at slightly more advanced features. So for example, here I've got a dynamic filter option. The grid, auto suggest, edit combo, and list all support dynamic filters. Dynamic filters are where you can reduce the size of the list that you're showing by filtering on something that's already on screen. So in this case, what I've done is I've just put a text box in where I can type a country name. Now, if I bring up the grid lookup, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, 6 or 7 UK companies. The auto suggest only shows me the UK companies. The edit combo only shows me the UK companies, and the list also only shows me the UK companies. If I put Spain in and do the same thing again, you'll see this is showing me the Spanish ones. You'll have to believe me, I won't go through all of them, but you get the idea. So dynamic filtering, something we use a lot of. It doesn't have to be even something you key in. You can have a radio button perhaps where you are selecting between current customers and past, previous customers that aren't live anymore, or current orders, future orders, archived orders. You can be quite subtle in how you apply these dynamic filters, and it can be more than one field as well, so you can have a combination of fields. So dynamic filtering is a really useful thing to look at. Other things that you can do, for example, if I go to the edit combo one and we look at the lookup there, there are lots of options which can help with performance that are worth looking at. So load data method, look at this one here. So the two options you've got are Ajax callback or at render time. Now, what this is saying is, when do you want the list of items to be built? At render time, if I'd have selected that one, means that when the screen is actually rendered and shown to the user in the browser will, in a hidden way, have that entire list of data be in the browser itself, ready to show in the list. If there's only 5 or 10 items or 20 items or 50 items, that'll be fine. If there are 5,000 customers in our customer table, that's going to make that display really slowly. Ajax callback means only get the list ready if you click in the box. And at that point, when you click, your browser will talk to the server, ask for the data, the server sends it back. So it's a much more efficient way of doing it. Especially if you're using the dynamic filtering, of course, because it may be you've already filtered a little bit, so you don't, the database doesn't have to push all the data back to the browser anyway. You might only bring you back 10 records out of 5,000 because you've already pre-filtered. So that's a nice one, and various of the lookup options have that feature. So when the data happens, so if you build out your app and you find it's running slowly, explore the lookups. Look to see whether you're bringing too much data back to the browser, perhaps. You've also got options to, for example, to do static filters or change the order that things are presented. So lots of options there. I mentioned with the list that you might want to use a list as a lookup, but actually show the list in a different way. Dan built this for me earlier, and it's this one, I think. This is actually a list. You can see the list here defined, but if I look at the list properties, you'll see that in fact the list is not displayed. It's not a list layout, it's actually a map layout. Here's all of the options you get with a list, look. So Dan built this one for me. It is just a list control, but it's actually displayed as a map. And so if I just show you this live, you'll see that we've got the drop down for the lookup on the text box. Should be coming through any moment now. There we go. But now instead of a list showing, I'm actually showing a map, which is quite a cool idea. So you could actually be using a map as a lookup, essentially. I think that's quite a nice idea, Dave, don't you?
Very cool, yeah.
So these would be the customers, or I think Dan put orders on here, but these could be customers, and you could be selecting from there. So I like that idea. I think that's a really nice idea. We were going to explore some other ideas. Perhaps, you know, we might get around to it for next week's webinar. We could try all sorts of different things. Calendar I could see being useful as well. So you need to put the feature key in to make the calendar work. But if you put the list as a calendar, you could, for example, be picking dates off a calendar where you've already got orders planned. So perhaps you're a florist and you're delivering flowers around your local area, and you want to pick a delivery date. Well, you want to choose a date that's already got an order on it. You could present the future orders on a calendar, and therefore be picking from a calendar to pick the date that would go in. I think that might be a nice idea.
Yeah.
The last one I'll just show you from this is the custom one. So what I was thinking what would we use the custom one for? Selwyn's video on the nightly notes shows a slider as a selector in the custom lookup. I thought that's a nice idea. But I was thinking one of the things you do very often, and this is slightly inspired by Google Drive, is if you're picking from a list, say of customers, you don't want to look at the list alphabetically. You want to look at the list more intelligently. So I say it's inspired by Google Drive. When I logged into Google Drive the other day, Dave, to pick up a document, I noticed that it was showing me what appeared to be documents in a random order at the top. It wasn't by date order, it wasn't alphabetically, and I couldn't understand the order until I looked at the note that was on the screen, and it says Google Drive now uses AI to present you the documents in an order that it thinks that you'll be choosing from. So for example, one of the documents at the top of the list said, you normally open this document at this time of the month. That was really useful. Another one said, a colleague has just edited this document, so we thought you'd want to open it. Another one said, this is a new document that you added yesterday, so we thought you'd be working on it. So in other words, it's putting things at the top of the list that were there for intelligent reasons, not just alphabetical. So I'm thinking, okay, right. So choosing a customer, why would you be picking a customer from a list? You might be picking a customer. By the way, this isn't the AI thing I'm going to show you in a moment, but you might be picking a customer because it's a customer that deals with you very often. So they've placed a lot of orders with you. You might be choosing a customer because they've placed a recent order and they've called back in to query the order. Or you might be placing an order. You might be choosing a customer because they're very local to you. Again, if that florist idea. So what I did was I built 3 lists. One to show our busiest customers, one to show the customers with most recent orders, and one to show the customers in the UK. And I've put them all in a container window. So I've got 3 lists there. Then what I've said is the lookup is a custom lookup to these 3 lists. So if I show you what I mean, when you use the drop down, we're not going to see 1 list, we're going to see 3. But my guess is that most of the time, it's going to be either one of our busiest customers, one of our most recent customers. These are customers with orders sorted most recent to oldest, or my local customers. If it's not one of them, you know, I could give them a 4th option of, okay, I just want to find it in the list. But you know what it's like, you're dealing with the same people all the time, aren't you, in business? It's, you know, you've got your customers that contact you all the time, you've got your customers that place a lot of orders with you. So I thought this is quite a nice idea. So you could actually give them multiple options. So if I pick Quick, these are customer IDs, not names, but if I pick Quick from there and click commit, that's put Quick in. If I go, okay, it's one of my UK ones, yeah, so I'll pick Islat. That's put that in, you get the idea. Yeah, I quite like that. I think that in our applications that we write, I think we will make use of this. You have to do a little bit of extra coding. So I've put in the on open, I've had to put a little bit of code in that clears the list. Otherwise, every time I go in, it'll have selected the same one. So that's the 3 lines of JavaScript that did that. And then I just did a really quick and dirty way of choosing the selection. I've just, because I'm expecting them only to select one list, all I've done is I've just added the 3 things together, concatenated
the 2 that you don't usually blank. Very cool. Exactly. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to put a bit of validation.
Like, how did you detect which list? Well, I just stuck them all together. That totally works.
I've just stuck them all together. Yeah, it works for this purpose. I can completely break it though, because if I select from 2, then it'll completely break my application.
Yeah, then it knows what you're doing. Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, so there you go. So I think I quite like that idea. I can hear from your lack of enthusiasm, you think this is a terrible idea, but I think this is a good one. I think this is a good idea. You can see I've just broken my apple there, but
Very
you get
cool.
the idea. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. So look, quick recap. So we've looked at all of the lookup types from the ones that have been in the product for a while through to the brand new ones. And I think lists and custom have got a big future. I think once we stop thinking about lists as lists, but as some other form, and we start thinking about giving people the option of not selecting from one list or multiple, I think these could really enhance an application. So there you go. So that's the lookup side of things. Any questions at this point, Dave? Or if not, I'll just wrap up the webinar with
actually,
my little
just about the map for a second.
Mm.
The example that you showed was using the list as a map, and we've done that before. I forget though whether or not that has the feature of being able to restrict to within a certain number of, say, miles or kilometers from a particular zip code. If there's some sort of filtering like that. I know it is for the map object, but I'm not sure if it is for the list. Maybe it is.
I think you can. Yeah, you can do it with the map object, which you could do. So you could do a map control in a custom, or you could actually do it with a grid.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
You can actually do it as a grid. Yeah, because grids have got the option of displaying their data as a map. It's I think it's the alternate view they're called. Yeah, it has alternate view. So what you can do, I can define, this is going back to my grid lookup, I could define an alternate view, which is a Google map. And I think you can do that type of distance searching there. So yeah, I think that's another way of doing the same thing.
Right.
Good question.
Or the map control as part of a custom lookup would work too. I like that. Very cool.
Excellent. Right, so here's my little freebie for getting to the end of that exploration of lookups. Here's my little freebie. Power Toys. Are you aware of Power Toys, Dave?
Not really.
Okay, Power Toys have been around forever. They were a Microsoft utility that you could install on a Windows PC. So this is Windows only, so no Macs and things at this point. Okay. And then when Microsoft dropped it and then sort of brought it back in the fold because everyone said Power Toys was so useful, I always have Power Toys installed on my PC. It's free and it's just a collection of utilities that does all sorts of random stuff. The thing I use in Power Toys all the time is the image resizer. So it just gives you a right-click option to resize images in your File Explorer. And that in itself, in my world, is worth it. I did end up resizing a lot of images. But one of the things they've just announced today, literally this morning, is a new AI-powered advanced paste, which you can use in your PC. And this is lovely. I love this. Let me show you what I've been doing with it in Alpha today. So here's the Alpha connection. Let's suppose you've written some code. I'm going to write a little. You still see my screen okay, Dave? Yeah?
Yep.
Cool. Let's suppose you're writing, not a class. Let me just do a little script. XBasic script. I'm going to write a little bit of XBasic here. This is not going to be the most interesting bit of XBasic, just following the whole theme here of this being slightly dull. I'm going to define a couple of variables. Then I'm going to write a loop for I equals 1 to 100, j equals I times 4. I have no idea why you'd write that bit of XBasic, but let's suppose I had. And let's suppose, Dave, that I copied that to the clipboard. And then using Power Toys, which I've got installed on my PC, I bring up the advanced paste dialog, which is Windows Shift V. And I've just copied that on the clipboard, okay? In here, I'm going to say translate to JavaScript and add comments. Watch this. How insane is that? That's just translated the XBasic. Rewritten it into JavaScript and added comments.
Also looks like it'll build, if you just set a plain list, just throw it into JavaScript for me or
it will, absolutely. It does all sorts. So I'll just do that again. And then what you can do, of course, is paste that straight into your code. There you go. So it's like it's not just for coders. They've plugged it this morning, came into my inbox and said this is such a cool thing for coders, and I can see it's massively useful for coders. You can ask it not just to do translations. You can say reformat my code, look for the bug in my code. It's just, you can ask it to do anything. And some of the examples I saw on the web this morning were people who'd written emails and they were pasting it in and saying, please rewrite this as if Shakespeare had written it, or Mark Twain, or all sorts. You can do anything. But from a coding point of view, just the fact you can copy, highlight a block of code, do the advanced paste, and say, find the bug in this code. It will do it. How
Very,
cool.
very cool. Yeah. Now, Power Toys, how do you get there? What's the URL?
Yeah, so if you Google Microsoft Power Toys, you'll get to this web page.
I prefer that you Bing it instead of Google it, would be my guess.
Okay, yeah, Bing it, or use your ChatGPT, use your search engine of choice. Look for Microsoft Power Toys, all one word, Power Toys. Just be careful, you end up on the Microsoft site, because there are some copies of it around that you wouldn't want to install. Yeah, so just be careful, you end up on the Microsoft site. Find it here. It tells you how to install it. It'll install, it just sits in your system tray, and then you'll get all sorts of really cool features. You can see all of the features and things that it's got here. So image resizer is the one that I use all the time, but there are so many cool features. So many cool features in Power Toys. Like I say, Microsoft built it, dropped it, and then brought it back into the fold because people like me complain too much.
That's very cool. Thanks for showing that, Robin.
And that's it. Thank you very much. So look out for Jack next week with his Docker and mobile apps webinar.
Robin, thank you very much. We're getting a lot of thank yous
for
the thing, and also thank you at the end for introducing that new tool as well. Look forward to our next webinar. All right, take care, everyone, and thank you for showing up. If you do have future questions, of course, you could always send them to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com. And until next Wednesday, hope you take care, stay well. Bye-bye.